I didn't come out here chasing some frontier fantasy. I came to do what I always do when my mind starts spinning like a ceiling fan with a missing blade. Walk until the inside noise quiets down. I've done night trails before, even in winter when the moon takes the edge off and the cold makes you honest. I pack light, move fast, keep my footprints neat. I don't post about it. I don't bring friends. I got a scar on the back of my hand that knows how to start a stove, a pack that leans into the wind like a second spine, and a lantern that I service like an altarpiece. That's my deal. I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who walks until the pitch inside my skull drops 2 semitones and I can breathe again. There's a ranger station a few miles south of the timberline, one of those squat cinder block places with a bulletin board that looks like a grandmother's refrigerator. Thumbtacks, fading notices, hints of someone else's worry sun-bleached into optimism. I was there this afternoon to check the weather and top off a thermos. A rookie ranger with a fresh mustache nodded at me and handed over a single-page thing printed off their intranet. "Just procedural," he said. "We hand it to solo hikers when the temp drops below 10. You look like you know what you're doing, but protocol's protocol." He smirked like a kid trying on seriousness. I slid it into the map sleeve and didn't think about it until later when it started whispering in my pocket like I'd folded a mouth. Here's what that procedure drop said. I'm not copying. My hands won't cooperate for that. But I remember it perfectly because it made me laugh in a moment and then, later, it didn't. Rule 1. Keep the lantern at shoulder height after midnight. Light low to ground creates false horizons in drifting snow. Rule 2. Don't pick up clothing you didn't drop. It's often evidence. Leave it undisturbed. It can also indicate paradoxical undressing. Do not follow the strip trail. Rule 3. If wind dies suddenly, sit and count to 60. Rapid warm fronts and ground inversion can mask cornices and hidden water. Rule 4. If you hear your name spoken clearly, assume it's distance acoustics. Do not answer unless you see the source. Rule 5. Dry socks at dawn, not dusk. Wet socks at night create false warmth. The one that felt safe, almost goofy, was Rule 5. Dry your socks at dawn? Okay, Martha Stewart. Rule 2 sounded like legal ass covering. Rule 1 and 3 felt like science. And Rule 4 felt like the kind of ghost story adults invent to make kids adopt good radio discipline. But the way the printhead had choked out, "Do not follow the strip trail," left a smudged underline that looked like a shaky hand. I folded the sheet and stuck it behind my map. The paper had a faint ammonia tang, like it had come off a copier that hadn't been cleaned, and that smell is still there, thin and medicinal under the stink of cold. I started later than I should have. The sun sagged red, then nothing, and the moon's face turned away like a bartender who sees you've had enough. The forest tightened into lines and then into black ribs. I kept the lantern high because I thought, hell, I'm here, why not humor Rule 1? The light cut a cone into the world. The cone contained snow, so fine it seemed alive. The wind was in a mood, and the trees creaked like old doors deciding whether to open. That sound went core deep for me. I grew up in a house with floorboards that sang when someone you didn't want to see was down the hall, and that living with groans sets off alarms I can't turn off. I had my layered clothing, the good kind, not the catalog kind. The scarf pressed into my face and stole my breath in small, polite sips. The big pack distributed the wind, so it didn't slice me in half, but the cold is an accountant. It finds the gaps. It found my wrists and chewed. It found my thighs and set up tenants. It found that scar behind my left ear and tapped it like an old friend. I kept moving until the steady rhythm of steps over snow gave me a score to hunt the day with. Crunch, sigh, crunch, sigh. I could have put my heartbeat on a metronome to it. Then the trail changed. The snow was bruised. Not drifted, not blown. Punched. I panned the lantern, shoulder high, and those little hollows rose out of the white. Divots at an angle, too short for deer, too wide for rabbit. Human. The pattern was wrong. No cadence, no consistent stride. It looked like someone tried to run while the ground tilted. They slalomed through spruce like they were drunk or chased. The prints came in from my right and angled ahead, disappearing into shadow. I told myself the reasonable story. An inexperienced hiker lost daylight, panicked, tried to reverse their own boot prints and failed. Then I noticed something that made the inside of my chest go cold in a different way. The depressions in the snow were too sharp for fresh powder, but there was a glaze to them, a sheen from breath or heat. Recently made. I stopped breathing for a second, the way you do when a dog you don't know walks up with its head low. I followed. Of course I followed. If you want to judge me for that, you've never heard someone call for help in the voice they use when they say your name. And I did hear a voice. Not words yet, just a promise of words, syllables coiled and waiting. The first thing I found was a glove. Wool, dark, similar to mine. It lay palm up like it had been put there for a photograph. And for a stupid second, my brain rifled through the shelf where it keeps jokes. Who takes their glove off out here? Before it hit the shelf marked with the word no. I picked it up without thinking, because there's some dumb reflex in me that wants pairs to be paired. The palm was warm, not the glove, the sensation on my skin. My own heat bounced back, violated any math. I stuffed it in my pocket. Rule 2 twitched uselessly, a fish dying in the dark. Then a second glove, then buttons like teeth. A shirt, furred with frost, lying open the way you rip open a present you regret buying. Every step forward put another little prize in front of me. A belt coiled like a snake. A jumper, heavy, dark, missing a sleeve. The sleeve was knotted around a branch, the knot tight the way a desperate person ties anything. My lantern threw shadows that made the knot look like a fist. I wanted to shout. I wanted to say, "What, buddy?" As if I was strolling up on a drunk friend who decided to do snow angels half naked. My mouth made the shape for hey and closed again. I kept a light high. The wind died, the kind of dead that makes your ears ring with your own blood. The trees stopped talking, and I could hear the little sounds of my body. Vet blink. Teeth seat themselves in gums. The white noise of the world clicked off. Rule 3 spoke up. If wind dies suddenly, sit and count to 60. I bit my knees like I was about to start a lunge, and then didn't. I counted to 6 to 15, and then I shook my head like a horse. The clearing opened like a mouth. He was face down, one leg twisted, one boot half off with the jean hem caught on the heel. Naked except for socks and boots, spine arch plowed into the snow like a sleeping animal had made a den and then thought better of it. I don't want to do metaphors here. I want to be so factual it hurts. The skin was patchwork. White, then chalky blue, then purple where the blood had made up its mind to stay. There was a clarity to the scene that made it obscene, like seeing a stranger's family photos in a trash can. His mouth hung open and a spit icicle had formed down one cheekbone, which meant he'd been there long enough to turn water into glass. His hands were clenched, dark fibers under his nails, like he'd clawed through cotton. The smell was hospital and penny and something sweet that tried to hide like it knew it didn't belong out here. I circled, making myself small without realizing it, shoulders hunched like something above could mark me by my height. I scanned for other tracks. Mine neat, his chaotic. No animals, no scuffle marks, no other boots. Just the silent argument between a person and the temperature. Rule 2 grew teeth in my head. Don't follow the strip trail. It's a marker of paradoxical undressing. When people freeze to death, sometimes they feel hot instead. Their blood flees your core, then your body pulls it back in a stupid attempt to restart the heart, and your skin thinks that means summer. So you take your clothes off. I'd read it before. It's one of those facts you think you can carry around like trivia, like a party story about why they pay lifeguards to tell swimmers the obvious. Standing over him, it stopped being interesting. It became a timer I couldn't see the face of. You can ask why I didn't try to drag him. I thought about it. My shoulder burned just from the idea. I knew what would happen if I hauled him wrong. Skin stuck to snow, ribs like broken piano keys. And look, the truth. He was past any help I can give. He was past everyone's help. I am sorry, okay. I thought the best thing I could do was mark the spot in my head, fix it to 3 trees like a map, and get back to the station with enough daylight to lead someone competent here. So I did the thing I'm good at. I made a plan and then obeyed it like it was church. I set up the tent at the edge of the clearing. You can call that dumb. I'll call it understandable. The ground there was flatter than miles of slope, and the wind dropped behind the little ring of trees. I told myself I'd rest 15 minutes, boil water, get heat into me, then turn around and retrace to the station. I told myself my legs were rubber from fear, not from the cold, and that the stupid burn in my thighs was lactic and not a red warning light. I told myself this while I put in steaks with fingers that couldn't remember math. I yanked the zipper with my teeth, and the metal tasted clean and mean. Inside, the lantern pushed the dark back like a bouncer with limits. Patches of the tent conversation became more honest. The nylon snapped, the poles clicked, each sound too loud because there were no others to share the burden. I huddled next to the stove and watched the water think about being water again. My hands kept doing little tasks to prove they existed. Tighten strap, check pocket, read the watch even though it's meaningless out here. My breath smoked and made the tent smell like wet wool and the ghost of detergent. That's when I pulled the Ranger paper out and read it again. The page had gone soft at the fold. Rule 4 stared at me. If you hear your name spoken clearly, assume it's distance acoustics. Do not answer unless you see the source. You know how a sentence can sit there looking like a cobra behind glass? That's what it did. I stuffed it in the mesh pocket and told the pocket to hold onto my superstition for a minute. I sipped from my thermos, and it tasted like tin and old sleep. There's a part of it to say fast, not because I want to be dramatic, but because I don't trust my memory to hold it slow without romance or crap getting in. I ate half a protein bar, and it turned into paste. I took off my boots, and the relief was obscene. I checked my socks, and they were damp in a way that made me want to cry. Not soaked, damp. I thought of Rule 5, dry socks at dawn, not dusk, and felt a quick flare of contempt. Dawn? It was already night. Who writes these? I kept the socks on because the thought of taking them off made my feet sting with anticipation. I didn't want that. I laced the boots loose to keep blood moving. I put the glove from the clearing next to mine and told myself I'd hand it to the Rangers, because that's the kind of idiot I was 2 hours ago. Then the wind came back like someone had unpaused it. It rolled over the tent with that big, empty howl that says the sky is larger than your plans. The forest started cracking again. I held the lantern high because Rule 1 had become a religion in an hour. The light trembled. Maybe my hand trembled, or maybe the canvas did. The flame steadied. I stared into nothing, which is to say, I stared into my own picture of the clearing outside. I could still see his back the way you can still see a camera flash if you close your eyes. I could still feel the stick slip of snow under my boot where I'd almost gone down next to him like I was going to hug a stranger from behind and apologize for something I hadn't done. Then I heard it. My name. Not the way your mother says it when you made a mess. The way a coworker reads your name off a sticky note from across the room. It came from the left side of the tent, low, angled up like it had to climb to reach me. Another voice under it, stretched, full of air, not saying words, shaping them, like a throat you hear through a door in a hospital. My mouth obeyed a reflex that's older than language. It opened. Yeah, I said. Then I remembered Rule 4. I snapped my teeth like a dog catching a fly. I held my breath. The world leaned in. The voice said it again, my name a little too fast this time, like someone learning how to use a mouth. I set the lantern down because my shoulder was screaming. The cone of light dropped and the tent walls got taller. Never lower the light, said the paper. Never create false horizons in snow. The horizon outside wasn't my problem anymore. The inside of the tent had enough geography. I didn't answer again. The voice tried 3 more times, each one pulling syllables in the wrong place, drawn out or shortened like it was reading from memory, and the ink was smeared. Then it moved around the tent. That's the only way to say it. Not footsteps. The sound moved. Every hair I owned stood up, and I suddenly knew the layout around me like I had built it. The tree to the east with bark like peeling paint. The stump to the north with a cut face filled with frozen sawdust. The little dip in the ground to the west where snow collects, which was exactly where the voice sounded most interested. It circled, keeping itself a thin arm's length away from the nylon, the way a shy dog will. It let the wind say what it couldn't. That's what it felt like it was charming the wind into carrying it. I told myself the voice was sound bouts. Trees would do that. Valleys would do that. You can hear your friends speaking 20 yards away when they're 2 feet behind you if you don't know what you're doing. But my name in that tone, that coaxing, I swallowed so hard it felt like betrayal. I dug out the little radio because I hated that long, low, saying my name voice worse than I hate asking for help. Something scratched the tent where my right shoulder touched it. That little brush, just fabric on fabric, stole all the blood from my face. I called the station frequency. It hissed. Surprise. Then it caught. Ranger Station. The mustache kid again. I could hear a TV in another room and somebody laughing. You seriously up there still? Everything okay? I said yes like a liar. Then I said no like a child. I found a body, I said. Face down, no clothes. I can mark it. I gave quick directions. 3 spruces, a blowdown, the old service road cut scar, my pace count. I said my name again so that when they wrote the incident report, they wouldn't put hiker like this was a fairy tale. He went quiet, and I could hear him getting older on the line. He told me to stay put. He told me they'd start a snowmobile if they could get one up that far, but the drifts were bad. He told me I sounded cold. I told him about the rules on the sheet. He said, slow, like he didn't want to make a superstition into a threat. Good. Keep that lantern up. Then, muffled over the radio, I heard my name again, but this time through both channels. One was the moving whisper outside the tent. One was the radio picking up something like my voice saying my name on a different mic. The kid said, "You bringing someone?" And I said no. And he said, "Hold on." And the radio went to that dead space where you hear only the electricity in the device thinking. When the voice returned, it was the older one you get when someone in a different office takes over. Deeper. This is Dispatcher Leon. We're sending a team to your last known. Maintain current position if safe. Do not approach the scene. If the wind drops, can you shelter in place for an hour? The phrase, maintain current position, made me want to puke. It felt like a countdown. He asked me to check my extremities. I did. My fingers were gone, which is to say they were there, but not mine. My toes were little joking bastards. My thighs were burning in a way that felt fake. I told him I was fine because that's what makes adults keep helping you. He said, rotate your ankles, adjust your layers. He said, don't fall asleep. I said I wouldn't. Then the radio cracked like someone stepped on it and hissed loud enough to make me flinch. I thought I felt heat rolling off the lantern. I thought, maybe I'm okay now. Maybe the panic is breaking. Maybe the storm is letting up. And that's the trap. That's where I need you to pay attention. That feeling in your skin that says you're fine is a lie. It's your body telling you to step outside and strip. It's a con artist with your mother's voice. I got cocky. I loosened the scarf to get more air, and the first breath without it felt like drinking hot water after days of thirst. I rolled my shoulders, and the inside of my jacket felt like pajamas. I took the boots off again because the pressure on my insteps was suddenly unbearable. Pain left. That scared me more than pain. I stared at my socks and felt a flush that I swore was the lantern's light hitting me different. I thought of Rule 5, the one I'd called safe, the one I'd laughed at. Dry socks at dawn, not dusk. The voice had a teacher's patience. Dawn, not dusk. I peeled them anyway. Stupid, glorious relief. My feet steamed in the cold. And yes, that's a thing. It looked like smoke. Don't ask me to explain the physics. It felt like watching yourself cry in a mirror and loving it for a second. That's when the tent zipper moved. A tiny sound, metal teeth gritting. Slow. My hand went to the knife on autopilot. The blade is not big. It's a utility knife you use for rope. But in my mind, it was a sword, and I felt a little drunk with it. The zipper didn't open. It pressed like a mouth against my palm through the canvas. I swallowed the noise that wanted out, that little high noise that would have said you got me. I grabbed the zipper pull through the fabric and held it like I could throttle it. The voice outside said my name again, lower now, almost embarrassed. Then it said something else. It said, "You dropped your glove," and I wanted to explain that no, not mine, his. I wanted to say evidence, because that word has the kind of power you can throw around when you're afraid. Then it said my name in a way that reached into my brain and tapped the soft place where my father used to sit when I was 6. It wasn't his voice. That would be too obvious. It was the shape of care and sound. I hated it more than anything I have ever hated. I pictured it working a mouth it had borrowed, practicing vowels like a tourist. I pictured it thinking it was doing me a favor. I sat and counted to 60 because that's what a rule is for, giving you something to do instead of the thing you want to do. The wind had not died, which meant Rule 3 didn't require me to. But counting was better than moving. 31, 32. My teeth remembered how to bite each other. 47, the inside of my thighs did that weird warmed from within shiver you get on strong pain meds. 60 arrived, like tapping a mile marker you don't believe in. I didn't move. Through the fabric, something tapped once, polite, like a nurse outside a curtain. Then again, farther around, the tap following the radius of the lantern's light. I kept the lantern up because Rule 1 had turned into a superstition I would kill for. The tint glowed, the way it does when you hold light inside your own fear. I let my mind go practical. If this is a person, they're hypothermic. If they're not, I'm staying in this dressing of nylon until the radio says my name from a source I trust. I tried to think about the look of the man's back in the clearing and failed. Every time I tried to summon it, I got a family photo instead. And as a kid in a yard, plastic pool, tooth gap. My brain was protecting me by lying. I hated it for that kindness. I wrote something on a post-it I keep stuck in my map sleeve for route notes. The pencil squeaked because everything is louder when you're the only thing making noise. The note said, "Heat means you're dying," and I slapped it above the lantern on the tent wall because I didn't trust my future self. I didn't trust that in 5 minutes I wouldn't call everything fine and step outside to peel down to my skin and dance. I figured if I made the cruelty visible, I might respect it. The ink bled a little from the moisture, and the word dying swelled at the end like it had a fever. The voice moved away and then came back sounding like it had learned that trick where you talk through your teeth. "I can see your light," it said. "It's too low." That was a mindfuck. Rule 1 from outside. I lifted the lantern higher, just to spite it, and hatred shook me warm for a second. "Name," Dispatcher Leone said on the radio, breaking something brittle in the tent. "Respond. Can you hear me? We're 3 out. 3 what? Miles? Minutes? Lives? We got a snowcat onto the service cut. I need you to do a thing that's going to sound stupid. I need you to put your boots back on." My breath went out in a noise because he'd hit me right where I'd failed. "How did you?" I said, and he cut me off, patient but stiff. "The rule sheet. Socks to dawn. Put the back on. If it feels like fire, make yourself a liar and do it anyway." I crawled to the boots like I was hauling my own body, shoved foot into leather bit back, and I almost saw sunlight with how much my vision whites out on that kind of pain. I hissed through my teeth and said fuck out loud like it was going to negotiate. The pain sharpened everything else, so fast the tent seemed too bright. I felt blood at the back of my head start paying attention again. I laced wrong, then right, then wrong, then good enough. I put the scarf back where it belongs. I pulled my gloves on and felt the glove from the clearing try to creep closer to the lantern. Yeah, I know that sounds like a ghost story. It was only warm air moving, that's all. But I moved my glove, the living one, over it like a mother bird anyway. I imagined the ranger mustache chiding me for even touching it, and the shame kept me honest. "Talk to me," Dispatcher said. "Make noise." He sounded like he was making himself not ask me about the voice, which told me this was not the first time a person had said the wrong thing to the wind-up here. I told him about the taps. I told him about the strip trail. I told him about the post-it. He said good. I hated the word in his voice, the way it made my obedience into a grade. But I like being told what to do because it kept me away from the voice that wasn't telling me anything. It was inviting me to tell myself. The mustache kid got back on, breathless, the kind of breath that goes in one long trench and out through a straw. "Almost there," he said. "Don't open to any voice." I said I knew. He said, "No, don't open unless the voice comes with a knock only we use." I said, "What knock is that?" He said, "You'll know it." I wanted to reach through the antenna and shake him, but the weird thing is, he was right. The knock started. First polite, then curious, then everything you are is on the other side of this. It tried codes you use with friends on dorm doors. It tried cop knocks, those big hammering ones. It tried patience, then tried a little tap-tap like a child. The radio breathed. Over the wind, under the knocks, that now familiar almost voice said the thing my father used to say when I'd lock myself in the bathroom at 8 years old because I didn't want to go to church. "You making it harder than it needs to be," it said. I said no into my scarf like I had stable ground to push off from. I don't know how long that performance went on. Time folded itself into tent, fabric, and stitching. I measured it in propane sips and the way the lantern wick drew black up its own throat. I measured it in the loops my mind tried not to stick to. Imagine the body again. Imagine the clearing. Imagine something honest. When the knock came, the one that was theirs, I knew it the way you know your own laugh in a crowd. It wasn't a pattern so much as a shape. 2 quick, pause, 3 to make a triangle I could see on a door that wasn't there. The radio said my name with authority. My whole body leaned like it wanted to put its ear on a stove. Call and response, dispatcher said. Say the rule. He meant the rules. Pick one. Anchor. I said rule 1 out loud. Keep the lantern at shoulder height after midnight. I said like a seminar student, and the voice outside, human, tight tire said, never answer to the wind. Not the same words, but the same script. The mustache kid's voice overlapped. Open, please. And then a third voice, female, older, with the kind of breath that means business. Set now. I slid the zipper and cold blasted him like an insult. The 3 shapes crouched in headlamps and winter bristles. The one up front was a woman with a braid frozen in points at her scarf. Behind her, mustache boy, eyes too bright from adrenaline. And behind them, a third, gray-bearded, with that look of someone who is not impressed by a mountain and is trying not to be mad at it either. Don't talk, Braid said. Move. She didn't give me the option to argue. She took my pack as if she could carry each of my nearly bad decisions on a strap and make them light. Mustache boy grabbed the stove like it was a baby. Graybeard threw his jacket over the lantern to kill it without a flare. Darkness returned with the cold, a partner I didn't want. Behind us, something in the clearing exhaled like disappointment. I swear on every small thing I've ever loved that I heard that. You'll say it was wind finding a new shape. You may be right. We moved without talking because every word is a leak when you're trying to keep heat and courage in. The snowcat lights were coming through the trees like a gas station glowing on an otherwise empty road. My feet in boots felt like feet stuffed into feet, but ache is alive and I took it gladly. We passed the clearing. I did not look. Then I did, because you don't put a post-it on your own mind and expect obedience. The spot where he'd been was the spot where he was. He had not moved. His back looked like a watercolor left in the rain. The female ranger flicked her head toward him just slightly, a little nod that said, "We know. He's real. He's not ours to save." Above us, branches clacked together like teeth. The cold got clever again, finding my wrist through the tiny gap where glove meets jacket like a pickpocket. I started to feel heat in my thighs again, and I wanted to announce it, like a guy in a sitcom pointing to a smoke detector and saying, "Do you smell toast?" Braid seemed to feel the change in my pace. "Almost there," she lied. "When we get to the machine, sit on your hands." She said like rule 6, even though there were 5. I clung to it, because an extra rule is a kind of mercy. The snowcat was the most beautiful, ugly thing I have ever seen. It roared patience. The driver, dispatch voice in flesh, leaned out and his face looked like those old photos of men on telephone poles, all windburned and duty. He pointed me to the inside, and I climbed like I was going to a confessional. I wanted to ask if we would go back for the body, but the answer was so obvious I kept my mouth shut. We would. Not tonight. Maybe not before dawn. But someone would, because that's how this place works. It lets you be brave when you can be useful, and then it teaches you humility when your usefulness runs out. I'm not a ranger. I'm not useful to the dead after a certain hour. We rattled down. I sat on my hands like I was hiding them from the room. Heat began to leak into the cat's cabin, and my brain tried to bloom under it the way a flower frets its way through a patch of cold soil. The mustached kid handed me a foil blanket, which did nothing but tell my skin there was a plan. The driver said nothing. His focus was a wall we could lean on. Braid's braid melted into wet rope. Graybeard stared at the window like it owed him money. The radio chirped alive. Voices flitted. Numbers, road names, a laugh tried to be a coping mechanism. I looked down. The glove from the clearing was on my lap. Pure muscle memory. I hadn't put it there knowingly. My hand must have scooped it when we broke the tent. I wanted to apologize to no one in particular. Evidence, I said, and Braid looked, clocked it, and nodded. We'll bag it in the station, she said. You did fine. That sentence sat in me like a hot coin. I did fine. I did not go outside when the voice shaped itself into a cruel kindness. I did not give in to the little joy of being warm. I did not answer when someone I loved had the wrong mouth. I did fine. At the station, everything gets smaller. The light gets yellow, the walls get too close, the posters start talking again. Someone made me drink something sweet, and it made my teeth itch. A nurse I barely remember put her fingers on my ear and told me I'd keep it. I sat on a bench and shivered in earnest, the kind of shiver that's a job. The room smelled like stale coffee and mop water and wet wool, and I liked it more than I have liked anything in weeks. On the table, the glove sat in a clear bag. It looked like a dark heart in a jar. Mustache Kid filled out the incident report, pencil going slow to make sure the right letters happened. Name, he said, and I gave it. Description, he said, and I said the words like pushing heavy things across a floor. He asked me if I'd heard anything strange. I looked at Leon. He nodded once. Voices carry, he said dryly. Terrain does ventriloquism. It's why we say what we say on the sheet. The paper was pinned to a corkboard now, far from the copier and its ammonia ghost. Rule 5 looked smug. Dry socks at dawn, not dusk. I wanted to tear it down and kiss it like a priest in a fever movie. Instead, I sat and watched a drop on the bag slide over the glove's knuckles and wanted to wash my hand for a very long time. Don't take this wrong, Braid said later, when the world felt like it might decide to keep me for a bit. But things know the lines we draw. She meant rules. They're not magic spells. They're habits we can grab when we can't think. The mountains teach us what works. We write it down for each other so we don't have to learn it new every time. She looked at the bag again with a little head tilt that said, We see strange things. We mostly explain them. You're staying the night. It wasn't a question. In the bunk room, the heat felt illegal. Every inch of me wanted to strip down and spread out on the mattress like a cat on a radiator. I did not. I unrolled my sleeping bag like the tent was still around me, made something private out of public. I wrote another note because apparently that's my new superstition. If you feel warmth too fast, it's the cold coming for you from the other side. When I woke in the gray before morning, the note was stuck to my chest. I don't remember putting it there. Maybe I did in the little hours. Maybe someone thought it was funny. Maybe I'm giving the world too much credit when I imagine that it tries to help. The important thing is I saw it when I opened my eyes, and for a half second, I believed the words like a kid believes the rules in a game. Not true, but also the only way you win. We went back up after dawn. The snow had changed shape in ways only rangers understand. They can read the wind's handwriting and tell you what kind of mood it was in at 3 a.m. We found him exactly as before, save for the drift curling over his shoulders like a blanket from a mother who shows up late. They did the work you don't want to think about. Photos, The small, careful movements humans afford each other, even at stupid, final moments. Someone said his name. They'd gotten it off his license in a Ziploc in his boot. It wasn't my name. The relief made me feel like a monster. I watched the paramedic, the nurse in a different jacket, kneel and talk to him under her breath like he was still in there. Little talk, nothing extraordinary. We do this even when we think we're scientific. We narrate to keep the oddness in place. Close by, the strip trail was now a lesson. Buttons glinting like seeds. The knot on the branch looked more purposeful in daylight. The gloves mate, mine had been as right, turned up under the little dip to the west where the voice had found the best acoustics. The thing about paradoxical undressing is that it is logic in a dream. A person moving through it is both freezing and burning, both smart and stupid, both wanting to die and demanding to live. It's not about judgment. It's about what bodies do when arguments inside them go bad. We brought him down. They covered him in a way that protected dignity, which is a difficult word to say about a person already gone. I walked on his other side and didn't look at his face. I stared at the thread on the zipper of the bag because threads are the kind of thing you remember when you can't risk the larger picture. The snowcat waited like a bus. In the cabin, Braid took my post-it from my sleeve, "Heat means you're dying," and stuck on the dash next to the old sticky note that read, "Check pins, check fuel, don't trust the sky." The dash looked like a little shrine for people who prefer instruction to prayer. I'm back at a smaller tent now, not on the mountain. Side yard, city noise. But tonight, I set the lantern high anyway. Habits carve their own grooves. I keep the rules folded in my jacket pocket, not because paper protects you, but because I'm the idiot who laughs at printers and then almost takes off his socks when the world feels like a hand over my eyes. I've kept the post-it because that scrap of yellow had my voice in it, written at the moment before I became someone who would obey anything to stay alive, and I value how mean I was to myself in that handwriting. You want more? You want the part where I admit the whisper that tried to be me didn't stop at the tent? Fine. Sometimes when I stand at the sink and the pipes in the wall sing, I hear the shape of my name again the way the wind learned it. It does not scare me the way it used to. It scares me in a grown-up way, like knowing you'll end up calling someone you promised yourself you wouldn't. I look at the magnet on the fridge where I shoved the Ranger sheet behind a menu, and I read the part where it tells me not to answer unless I see the mouth that asked me. I picture the clearing and the way a human body can become a letter written to other humans, that bent back like a curve in a sentence that says, "Do not be stupid for this." I'm not giving you a moral. I'm not here to make Frost into a haunted house or bravery into a brand. I'm here because sometimes when the wind dies in a city alley and the noise shifts like someone just muted a TV, I count to 60 and hold the lantern higher in my head. I'm here because the heat is creeping back into my thighs as I write, and I need to remember that warmth isn't always a promise. It's sometimes a trap with my name on it, said cleanly like a friend. I'm gonna leave this little tent in a minute and step back into my house and the heater that hums like a good dog. I'm gonna keep the rules where I can see them. I'm gonna keep the glove out of sight because I don't want to see my own fingers in it. Those footprints are still on the inside of my eyes. They come in from the right and do that little panic dance that says someone argued with themselves out loud and lost. Every time I close my eyes, I move through them again, step for step, smelling copy toner and iron and the faint sweet of a person cooling down. Each time, I stop before the clearing. I make a fire in my head and tie my scarf in a firmer knot and pretend I didn't need a piece of paper to tell me what to do. Each time, I hear my name and pretend it's only distant acoustics. Each time, I don't answer. I'm going to leave my tent and try to find my way home. I can feel the heat returning to my body. It's not mercy. It's a cue. When it rises like that, when it feels like bathwater climbing your skin, that's the moment you either remember or you don't. So I'm saying this out loud one last time for the stupid, loving animal inside you that will want to strip and lie down. Keep the lantern high. Don't talk to the wind. Sit when the world goes quiet. Don't pick up what you didn't drop. Dry socks at dawn. If you like, tape my post-it. Tape it where you'll see it when your bones hum. Read it like a prayer in a language that doesn't care if you love it. Heat means you're dying. Don't fall for it.